Hello and welcome everyone, this is Snitch Racer here once again, and today I will be doing a tier list on the vehicles in Twisted Metal 1. This list is based on my personal preferences at about 80 hours in the game. The placement on this tier list is going to be based on how fun each vehicle is and how effective they are, on the medium difficulty. So if you're looking for a list on just pure practicality, this might not be the one for you. But that being said, I feel like I've made a lot of great decisions here that people could agree on. This list is also going to be going from worst to last, starting with the trash tier and ending with the S tier. And just like the last video, I just want to thank Vicarious Nick for making this tier list and making it publicly available. Now let's just get right into it and start out with this trash tier. And by nobody's surprise at all, really, it will be Pit Viper, representing the trash tier as the only vehicle in it, thereby making it the worst vehicle in the game, according to me, of course. Angela Fortin is the woman that is driving Pit Viper, and she is in it for $1 million cash. The vehicle is a stereotypical looking dune buggy with a snake design on the hood that looks like the mouth is open. I can only assume that's supposed to be where her special comes out. That being called Sizzle, which is a green blob that shoots out the front of her vehicle, and it kind of sounds like poo. The special does not do a lot of damage altogether with just one shot, but it can be fired at a very fast rate, making it very useful when stacked together. But unfortunately, that's where all the positive comments end about Pit Viper, because to me, they are the only character in the game that is almost unplayable. This is due to the horrendous handling of the vehicle and the complete lack of armor and next to no speed. The handling will have you drifting around and sliding all over the place, and not in a good way like Forza Motorsport. The armor will do next to nothing to protect you, which is obviously similar to characters such as Mr. Grimm and Spectre, but unlike Spectre and Mr. Grimm, you do not have the speed to get away as a secondary option. All that being said, I would simply never recommend this character to anybody, which is very unfortunate because I find the vehicle itself, it has a very cool design, and the character who drives it, Angela, I find very cool. But unfortunately, she will be put in the trash tier. And starting out at the bottom of the C tier will be Yellow Jacket, a New York-style taxi cab that is driven by Charlie Kane, a man who is just trying to find his son, who just happens to be Sweet Tooth. To me, this character is very easy to pick up, especially when you're new to the game, as it is one of the most well-balanced characters in Twisted Metal 1. The handling and the speed are the very definition of mid, and you'll find the special itself is very easy to hit people with. It just does not do very much damage. Now, the problem with that is you'll find once you start mastering the game and getting used to the physics and everything like that a lot more, that this character ends up being not very useful compared to the other ones. That is because you'll want to either have a high amount of armor to ram the crap out of people in this game, or you'll have to have a large amount of speed to get away from people and not be hit at all. And unfortunately, Yellow Jacket has none of this. So, despite the fact that they were one of the go-to characters for me when I first started playing Twisted Metal, that is no longer the case. Up next, and only slightly higher in the C tier, will be Outlaw. This vehicle is a classic-looking American police car from the early 90s / late 80s. It is driven by Sergeant Carl Roberts. Just like Taxi Boy, Outlaw is a very well-balanced, easy-to-pick-up character with an even easier to use special. This is an Omni Taser that will grasp onto any vehicle that is nearest to you and do a minor amount of damage. The one glaring disadvantage of this special is it forces you to go into harm's way, as I don't think it goes much further than like maybe 20 meters, which makes using this taser against the bigger characters very risky. Whereas the smaller characters, the special itself can be absolutely deadly when combined with ramming. This special is arguably the most unique special in the entire game, which can make things feel fresh when using them. The weak armor, though, does make using the special feel a little impractical, which is why I can't quite put the character in the B tier. Now, moving on to that B tier, the first character in it will be Darkseid, which is a massive semi-truck that is driven by Mr. Ash. One of the first things you'll notice about this character is its lack of special. It technically does have a special, it just does next to no damage. It's just a little white pellet that shoots out the front, which seems like it does the damage of throwing a glass of water on someone, making this honestly the worst special in the entire franchise of Twisted Metal. But of course, that certainly doesn't really matter, as the main tactic for this character is the ramming. If you simply treat this vehicle like a demolition derby car and ram everybody you see, apart from Warthog of course, you'll take off people's health within seconds. The one risk of this being that you'll be taking damage at the same time, and it seems like it's utterly random the way the ram damage works in this game. Using this tactic is a very fun experience, but the fact that it does backfire on you occasionally makes it more of an RNG type playthrough. Now, of course, the high armor of Darkseid does compensate for this, but not quite enough for my liking, which is why I have placed them at the bottom of the B tier. Next up is Thumper, which is the lowest of all the low riders, driven by Bruce. He just wants to enter the competition so he can stop LA from being destroyed. The lowrider that he drives is a pink Impala, if I were to guess. It is my favorite looking vehicle in the entire game. Thumper has medium armor, not so great handling, but some decent speed. Thumper's special is the famous flamethrower, which is shot out of the front out of the vehicle, and it has a very short range. When used properly, it can be absolutely devastating, especially when combined with a freeze missile. To help counterbalance how powerful the special is, it is quite difficult to aim and get used to, especially when new to the game itself. On top of that, of course, you do have to get near vehicles, just like Outlaw's special, making it very risky to use against those big boys. Overall, this character can be very fun to use at times, but also very difficult, which is why I find them, or have them rather, in the B tier here. Alright, now coming up next is the famous clown boy himself, Mr. Sweet Tooth. Driven by the infamous Needles Cane, he wants back the one thing in his life that means the most to him, his best friend. Sweet Tooth, of course, is the super recognizable boxy ice cream truck design with the classic clown head on top. Their special is a napalm cone that is said to come in both vanilla and chocolate, and just like most specials in this game, it is a projectile that is fired out of the front of the vehicle. In this case, it goes directly forward with no tracking capability whatsoever, but it does a lot of damage. It can even kill medium characters, I find, within 2 hits if you get the hits direct. Getting those direct hits does require a lot of skill, making this another character that isn't very noob friendly in regards to using their special. One nice thing that does make Sweet Tooth a little bit easier to use when starting out is his higher armor stat. It is pretty decent, just not as good as some of the characters like Darkseid or Warthog. Clown Boy's biggest weakness, of course, though, is its slow speed. You will have a lot of trouble getting away once you start being shot at, especially on the map Highway Loop. or rather Freeway Free For All as it's called in Twisted Metal 1. Combine that with his not so great handling and you can see why this isn't a go-to character for me in this game. So Niels Kane, I'm gonna have to put you in the B tier. Taking first spot in the B tier will be Spectre. This is a classic looking sports car from the 1960s that is seemingly modeled after a Corvette Stingray, driven by Scott Campbell, who is quite literally a ghost that just wants to be able to live again. Their special is called Phantom Burst, and it is the first iteration of the classic homing missile that Spectre always has that goes through walls and tracks enemies relentlessly. This is an almost guaranteed hit, the keyword being almost, because for some reason occasionally the missile kind of gets a mind of its own and flutters about, missing the target entirely. Also, it does a little less damage than desired, though overall it is definitely an effective special. Spectre is the first of 3 vehicles that I would consider fast in this game. Its lightning speed and great handling not only makes it very fun to drive around, but also very effective in dodging missiles and other attacks. Though in my opinion, Spectre's not quite as fast as Grim or Crimson Fury, making dodging attacks and avoiding them a little bit more difficult than those 2 characters, which is why I will be placing them in the B tier today. And just barely squeaking into the A tier and rounding out the bottom of it is Hammerhead, a monster truck driven by Dave and Mike that crushes its enemies under its giant tires. The special is called Smasher, and when driven into enemies, the special is automatically deployed, crushing your enemies under those tires. The large size of the vehicle plus the automatic deployment does make this special extremely effective. Combining that with the heavy armor of the vehicle and the effective ram damage, you'll get one of the most fun and easiest to pick up characters in the entire game. Though based on personal preferences on the slow speed and the poor handling, I will be placing Hammerhead at the bottom of the A tier. Now next up in this tier and right smack dab in the middle is a surprise for a lot of people, and that will be Crimson Fury. They are described as a super fast and sharp sports car, which, side note, is a bright red Lamborghini looking vehicle, which to me is absolutely badass. Now, I know what you're saying, Snitch, what are you doing? How can you have a tier list in Twisted Metal 1 and have Crimson Fury this high up on the list? But just hear me out, please. Hear me out. Not only is this vehicle extremely fun to drive around with the really good handling, it is also extremely fast. Actually, the fastest vehicle in the game. So the speed and handling makes them really fun to use, and on top of that, you can dodge attacks like it's your day job. In fact, Crimson Fury and Mr. Grimm are so fast, they can actually outspeed most missile attacks in the game. Now, one thing we'll obviously have to talk about is Crimson Fury's special. The most polarizing special in the game, if you ask me. This is called Crimson Blade, and it's described as a thin, armor-melting laser. So basically what it does is shoot out a red, thin projectile straight out of the vehicle, which of course is very similar to Darkseid. The difference being is Crimson Blade actually does a decent amount of damage. Not too much, but it does get the job done. Of course, the glaring issue of this special is its difficulty of use. It being so thin makes it very hard to aim, and you'll have to be extremely precise when doing so. But the amazing thing is you can hold up to 6 of these specials on you at once. Not only that, but you can fire it extremely fast. And the amazing thing is you can absolutely melt through pretty much every single character in the game if you're able to effectively use the special over and over in a row. So personally, once you get very good at this special, it is my favorite to use in the entire game. It is extremely effective when used properly, and you can even juggle certain characters exactly like you would in a fighting game like Street Fighter. One giant weakness, though, that the vehicle Crimson Fury has is its entire lack of armor. Way too often on playthroughs, I'll be doing very good as Crimson Fury, only to make the wrong turn and have my playthrough ended in an instant. So despite the fact that I have an absolute blast playing as this character, and I'd highly recommend him, his lack of armor, unfortunately, is what brings him down to the A tier and not quite up to that S tier. But seriously, you guys, you do gotta give Crimson Fury a chance. That special is extremely satisfying to use once you get used to it. And now rounding out the A tier, we have Mr. Grimm, which is described as a highly maneuverable chopper built to go the distance. That is being driven around by a nameless driver. His special is a skull that is shot out of the front of the vehicle as a projectile, and this special does a crap load of damage. It is definitely the most powerful special in the game. You will be able to melt through some of the smaller characters in as little as 2 specials. Now, of course, the one downside of this special is you do have to be pretty precise with the aiming, so when you are new to the game, he's not exactly one of the characters that's easy. But once you do get more used to it, you'll find yourself absolutely loving this special. Also, one thing that does improve the aim of the special of Mr. Grimm is the excellent handling of the vehicle. This rather cool looking motorcycle actually has a little bit better handling than Crimson Fury. Not only that, their speed, I honestly think isn't much slower than Crimson Fury at all, making this another character that's an absolute blast to drive around, and another character that you can just flat out dodge and outspeed attacks. And of course, Mr. Grimm's biggest weakness is by far their lack of armor. I simply can't see how they don't have the weakest armor in the game. The bigger characters will absolutely melt you within seconds, so you kind of have to play the game by avoiding those big characters like crazy, which not only can be very stressful, but you can be on the most perfect run ever and have it end completely just like that. And honestly, if the ram damage wasn't broken in this game, I'd actually have Mr. Grimm at the very top of this list, easily. But overall, for me personally, they are an absolute blast to play as. They are a great challenge character, one that is difficult to get used to, but a blast once you master it. And coming in at second place and at the bottom of the S tier will be Warthog, an old classic army Hummer driven by Commander Mason. Warthog's special is the XQJ-37 Hornets, which are 3 missiles that actually do a pretty decent amount of damage and also track enemies. Now, I know a lot of Twisted Metal fans are going to be shocked that I don't have this character at the very top of this list, but just hear me out. Are they the most powerful character in the game? Yes. But are they the most fun to be? To me, no. So with this character, the most effective way of using them is to just absolutely overuse the crap out of the ram ability. Like literally just point at a car and drive forward and you'll find yourself melting through people like crazy. Now my problem with that is that you don't actually get to play the game as it's intended quite as much. Personally, when I play as them, I rarely actually use the missiles. I just find it way more effective to just flat out ram them, making the weapons inside the game not nearly as effective. But once again, this is the most powerful character in the game, and honestly, by a pretty large margin. Their ram damage, of course, is absolutely insane. On top of that, though, their handling is actually pretty decent. Their special is nice and simple and effective, and their heavy armor allows you to take more risks than most other characters. So despite the fact that this isn't number 1 on my list, I would highly recommend Warthog as the first character you try out when starting this game. And yes, that's right folks, here we are, number one. Number 1 on this list is Roadkill. Hands down my absolute favorite in the entire game, and a character I've actually beaten the game with at least 7 or 8 times. This vehicle is described as a heavily armored demolition on wheels that was pieced together from many junkyard parts, which is driven by a man named Captain Spears, who just wants to fix some past mistakes. Roadkill's special is called Steel Dagger, which is simply just a giant rod of rusty metal fired at 100 miles per hour. Now, the reason that this little junkyard dog is my favorite is it kind of has the best of both worlds. It has pretty decent speed and some decent ram damage and armor to boot. Now, this is pretty cool for me because it allows me to kind of try multiple strategies. I can either just go around being a menace, ramming everybody, well, except for Warthog, of course, or just go with the old classic running gun strategy. And me personally, I actually kind of like to use both at the same time based on which character I'm going against. This all leads to that constant change of pace this character creates that keeps me coming back over and over and over. Honestly, when I think about it, I literally have nothing bad to say about them at all. They are by far the most replayable character in the game and the most fun in my humble opinion. And that is why Roadkill is number 1 on my tier list for this game, and they will forever be. And so there completes my tier list of the vehicles in Twisted Metal 1. Anyways, I just want to thank everyone for watching the video. Feel free to like and subscribe and all that stuff. I hope everybody's having a wonderful day, and remember to tune in next time when I record my rectum.